My hope is that what is taking place here is that the audio has actually been set up in such a way that it records. Today is Monday. I believe it is the 21st of the month of March. It's been a while since I have actually recorded here at Spreaker, if I'm saying that correctly. What I want to do here is that I recently read a post that concerned one of the corporations in the United States of America and around the world, actually, that has brought great inspiration to me for years. And it has brought great inspiration to individuals all over the world. The original founder of this particular corporation, when it was not a corporation, was a person named Walt Disney. And the material that Walt Disney has created out of his own mind when he originally had Mickey Mouse, and before he had Mickey Mouse, I forget the name of the character that he had. All of the things that he did with, I think his name was Salvador Dali or something to that effect, is found online, all kinds of things in regard to that. It's just phenomenal. And I just saw where individuals were talking about being woke and a woke culture and all of those types of things. And what came to my mind was some experiences that I have had in life, places where I and others have been excluded from various places that we wanted to and thought we did belong. And this is what is being done in these United States of America, is that individuals are being told that they don't belong. And there was a writing that was done years ago by a man named Philip Yancey. He was a Christian. I think he was one of the early writers for Christianity Today. And he wrote about this in one of his books. I don't remember the title of it. It may have been Living on the Margins. And he talked about marginalized people. Others that I can think about as they immediately come to mind are people like Mother Teresa, and the fact that she went to live among those individuals who were considered the untouchables in England, in India, and she touched them. She touched the untouchables, and she spoke of the aspect that every day, she saw Jesus Christ in his distressing disguises, And part of that is written really in our Constitution, the Constitutions of the United States of America, and particularly in the Declaration of Independence. And that's where I'm going with this. I'm a person who's lived a few years now, and I studied civics. It was a required course when I was growing up. I'm near my 70th birthday, and when I was going to school, I had to study civics. I initially went to a predominantly black, indeed an all-black school. And in my 11th and 12th grade of high school, I transferred, not because I necessarily wanted to transfer to a school that was made up of both people who were black and people who were white. It was predominantly white. But because I needed a particular course according to a course of study or a program that I was in with the intention of going to college, and it required that I take chemistry in my 11th grade of high school as opposed to taking um, physics in the 11th grade. And so the school that I was going to that year did not have a chemistry teacher. That district, I guess, required that they switch teachers, or the teacher switched each year. One year he taught at the school that was predominantly white, and he taught chemistry in that school. And then the next year he taught chemistry in the school that was predominantly black. The year that I was there, in the 11th grade, he taught chemistry in the school that was predominantly white. So I needed chemistry, and I made the choice that I would go to the school that was predominantly white. That was the only reason. I had not planned. Actually, I had a different plan altogether. And so I went to a school that was predominantly white. I was in the 11th grade. I was one of 3 students who were in the 11th grade. As far as I remember, there was one student who was black who was in the 12th grade. And the 9th grade of that school was totally integrated, as we called it at that time. The 9th grade had both all the students in that district who were black and white. And then the next year, when I was in the 12th, that school was totally integrated altogether. And so that's where I went to school. The experience of going to school there really, for me, went pretty smoothly in the fall of the year and the spring of the year. Pretty much went very smooth. I didn't, as they say, bother anybody. No one really bothered me. The spring of the year was interesting. As we came to the end of the year, I was standing in the hallway of the school, and a person bumped into me. I was from a part of the city. I had spent a major part of my life pretty much fighting. And I was now living in what we call the country. And what occurred was that I was used to fighting and defending myself. I was just used to that. But I had not had to fight when I was living in the country. I was not, as they say, in the streets. I came home. I rode a bus to school. I didn't really talk to very many people. And I rode a bus back home. So I was all right. I had to study, and I did. I did. I remember there was one teacher of English who helped me a great deal. Helped me to do learning as far as the English language was concerned. And I was making what I thought was great progress. That spring, that person bumped into me when I was standing in the hallway. I was not looking in that person's direction, and he specifically bumped into me. And when I looked up, he was on the different side of me than he had bumped into me originally. He was still standing there. And I looked at him, I said, "Did you bump into me?" He said, "Yes." He was a Caucasian individual. And then he said, "I'll do it again." And I couldn't believe that, because it let me know he had the intention of bumping into me. And where I came from, you didn't do that to me. And I looked at him like I would use the word with an incredulous look, like, "Really?" And He then bumped into me from the other side. He had two of his friends with him who were bigger than me and bigger than him. They were all football players. He was a running back, I believe. And he bumped into me again. And I tried to, just discourage him from doing that. And then he said he would hit me. And I basically said that would not be a wise thing to do. And he swung and he hit me. Well, we had a fight. And then I was taken to the principal's office and expelled from school. Years later, I came back home, and one of my friends from school, who was in the 9th grade at the time, greeted me as if I were a hero from that fight. And he told me that I really, really fought well and how proud he was about me fighting that particular fight. It was then that I understood the ramifications of that fight. Truly, I did. And let me tell you what took place in that fight. In the class that I was in, there were 3 African Americans. 2 of them did not do anything on a Friday night. I was the only one that could do anything on a Friday night, legally, you might say. And that Friday night, that Friday that I was in a fight, that Friday night was going to be the last prom of that school, in which people could come to the prom, the 11th and 12th graders, people who could come to the prom. Legally. Could be all white, or pretty much all white individuals, Caucasian individuals. And they wanted to make sure that I was excluded from the prom. Now, understand that I did not even think about going to the prom. I had never gone to a prom before, and I had not thought about going to the prom at that school, honestly. But they did not know that. Their intent, brilliant, to get me expelled from the school. I had privileges that they did not even want me to consider, and I did not know to consider. And that's what's going on in so many places in America today, is that people are seeking to exclude others. The text says, of the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths, that all men are created equal. Well, that text really should say all humans are created equal. Humans are created equal. All people born, and you might need to include all kinds of things in regard to that. And however, in this day and time, you go about the classification of who is and who is not human and all those kinds of things, there have been all kinds of work that has been done in regard to this, that, and the other. However that is done, we keep evolving as far as life is concerned. But that's what's taking place. I've had experiences. I am a minister and have been in the ministry, official ministry, since the year 1982. Been ordained, as they say, ordained first as a deacon, and then ordained as a minister. That means that in the States, I can do what they call marriages and do funerals and all those kind of stuff with the designation that it's being done in the capacity that's recognized legally since 1989. Training MDiv, Doctorate of Ministry, all of those things, and a student of the Bible. I've had great professors. I remember being in school in the master's degree program, and an individual stood up, a professor from Austria no less. As far as I know, a country whose population is predominantly white, stood up in America and said at that school, Dr. King should not have marched. And in a class where there was 150 students, 100 of them being predominantly white, 100 of them being white, the school itself was predominantly white. 50 of them were black, some of the blacks from Africa. And I was a student that had gone into the military, where I had served on a committee that dealt with black and white issues. Served on the committee. I was not a young student that went from high school and then went to undergraduate school and then went to study at a master's degree level. No, that was not me. I was 30 years old. Had already worked in corporate America for the company that preceded what is present day Verizon. I worked in the middle of Washington, D.C. I'm very proud. It was a company that proceeded first for what was then CMP Telephone Company, and then for what was Bell Atlantic, all of these 1325 G Street. That's where I worked. I was pretty good, but I felt that I had a call from God to do ministry, and I wanted to make sure that before I just gave my life and soul to Bell Atlantic, that I followed the call of God. And so I went through that process. And I was in the ministry. And my leader, conference president, told me that I had to go. I had to go to the particular school that I was in. I had already studied at Eastern Baptist Theological Seminary. He said I had to go. There were no options for me to remain in that school. I was first told I had to go to the school that I had done the undergraduate at. I had to go to that school. And then I had to go with my family. I already had a family, children. I had to go. And then this professor stood up from Austria and said, Dr. King should not have marched. And there was complete silence when he said that. He should not have marched for what was then called civil rights. And then there was silence from the whites, from the blacks. It was not the first time he had said that. It was clear. Some of the individuals in that class are now leaders in that particular church. I was silent for a while, but my sisters had marched when Dr. King had the call, had given the call. My sisters, my cousins, they had marched. One of my sisters had died. I don't know how to explain this to you. Today is March the 21st, 2022. My sister, who was a major part of my life, had been born on March the 23rd, 1947. She was 18 years old on March the 23rd, 1965. Rather than being maybe 2 or 3 months from her graduation, she was lying in a bed, dealing with a cancer that had started maybe 2 years before. First showed up for me as a little knot, little bulging knot lump on her right hand, I believe. She was the love of my life, really, in a certain kind of way. She was everything to me. I was 13 years old. Maybe I was 13, or like 12. March 23rd, she was 18. March 26th, she was dead. That professor in 1986, after she had marched, said Dr. King should not have marched. He was saying my sister should not have marched. He was discounting her life. And after I was silent for a while, I said, why? Why? And that professor was upset. The long and short of that was that not only was he upset, he was like the young man in high school. He ended up eventually getting me expelled from employment in that particular church ministry. And that's what happens when people keep drawing lines. It takes them 50 plus years to finally understand that there is this separation that keeps being created by these lines. They keep drawing lines. And rarely do individuals actually understand what's going on. I was surprised really this year because one of the individuals I think is one of the most intelligent people that I've seen. I've been watching him, reading his stuff, seeing his material. I went to California a few years ago and understood that he was one of the individuals, as far as I remember, who's involved with this material that was going on in California about building a underground freeway. If I remember correctly, I may have it wrong, you can tell me later, but if I understood correctly, he was one of the individuals about building this freeway that would transport people and cars in California underground. And I just thought it was ingenious. I did not know how it would end up, but I thought it was ingenious because of all the traffic that I saw. You had to really keep your eye open when you traveled there in California. You went from, say, Los Angeles to San Francisco or whatever it may be. But It was ingenious. And then he was talking about going to space and making it commercial, making it profitable. But this year, I don't know how this individual dealt with the death of George Floyd. I wasn't following him, paying attention to him. But a few months ago, I think it was, that he put out that he thought that there should be something done about world hunger. And somebody challenged him, and he had been compared to a Marvel hero, Tony Stark. And I put online somewhere that if he was a modern day Tony Sparks, I think is his name, but Iron Man, if he was modern day, then he would give some of his funds. I think they say he's a trillionaire. I don't even know how you stack that much money up, whatever that may be. But he came forth and did it. He came forth and did it. I mean, I applaud that. I celebrate that. But with the situation in Ukraine and with Russia, from what I've read, and I don't read all kinds of things, but he has put up a Starlink internet situation where people are able to communicate with each other and with others. I applaud that. Don't know what it is exactly, but the sense of it, it hits me. It makes sense to me. And then he's taken the side of the Ukrainians. I don't understand war. I pray about it. I pray about it. That's what I do. I'm a minister. I just pray about it and ask God to please intervene and help people and save people. I don't understand war. My war hero is a man that was involved with World War II, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He said, when God calls a person, he says, come and die. So I belong to God. That Constitution of the United States of America, all people are created equal. All people. All people. This society is intended to be inclusive. Inclusive. That requires that we all grow. All of us. And growth requires that we study the ancient texts. The ancient texts. Grow requires that we have new awarenesses that break upon us as we study the ancient texts and open ourselves up to what really it was. Not just that Jesus Christ said, but what Jesus Christ meant. Every one of the names of God in the Old Testament, and there are hundreds of them. Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Shalom, every one of those are personal names where an individual had an encounter with God. An encounter with God. They are personal encounters with God. When we come to the people of Africa, we initially were made to think that they had some kind of polytheistic worship. But the Old Testament is filled with these personal encounters. God shows up according to our need of God, and we need to name the place where we encountered God. That's how Jacob becomes Israel. It's a personal encounter with God. All people are created equal. All people are created equal. Woke is not so that you can condemn somebody. It's so that you can stretch your amount and ability to love everybody. That's what woke is. I've had to wake up over and over and over again. My first challenge was a young man that was a member of the church. And when I first met him, he was hiding out, and I told him there was no need to hide. No need to hide. No need to hide. And unfortunately, what happened with that young man is that I baptized him, and he stayed in the spiritual center of the church for a little while, maybe a year or two. And then, because of all kinds of things, he went back to the life that he had. And I had tried to protect him or tell people, treat him a particular kind of way, but I don't know that I was successful at that. He went back to the lifestyle again. I tried to say that if he could change, if he could, the literature that I was reading, that's when I was exposed to Philip Yancey. If he could change, and Philip Yancey was not the person, he was writing about this kind of thing at the time. But he was not the person that was saying that if he could change, it would take at least 5 years. If he could. Now, this was early. And the individual eventually, because people just wouldn't listen, this young lady kissed him, and that was the first time he kissed me. He went right back to where he was. About a year later, I saw him, encouraged him to come back to church. He came back, and then I married him to this young lady and baptized him again, if you will, and then married him to this young lady. And then he left what was home for him. And then what occurs is that he moved away from the community that he was a part of. And some years later, let's just say that through some means, he was dead. So I baptized him. Let's say I met him. I baptized him the first time. And I baptized him the second time. I married him to a wife. And then I did his eulogy. At the end of his eulogy, he had already prepared a song because he could sing extremely well. He had already prepared a tape. And he said, if you're listening to this, that means that I have passed or died. And the song that he sung at the end was called At the Midnight Cry. That song says, at the midnight cry, I'll be going home. All through that song, I cried like a baby. My point is simple. As far as I know, America is to be a place where individuals are included, not excluded. When you're on these shores, I don't know about other places. I don't know about other places. But on these shores, and I think it's important that I say on these shores, and I think it can be a model for other places, other governments. I think democracy is important. People need to think for themselves. They need to think. If you are dealing with the Bible, Christianity, you need more, in my estimation, than the 1611 understanding of the Bible. We have so many tools today. Christians today can understand biblical history from a number of perspectives. Don't be hypnotized by anybody's reading of the Bible. I don't care what language. They can read it in Hebrew. They can read it in Greek. They can read it in Latin. I don't care what they're doing, the liturgy in or anything else, in my estimation. Get it till it works for you. Works for your people. And don't be mad if others take different routes to it working for them. America needs to work for everybody. And everybody does not have hundreds, thousands, millions of dollars to pay for access to what belongs to everybody. And we all need access. And if someone has paid for you to get there, others have to work to get there. And once they get there, they don't need to be denied getting there. We all want to get there, wherever there might be, whether it's heaven on earth or heaven period, we all want to get there. We don't all have to take the same route. We just all want to get there. And my getting there does not stop you from getting there. There's enough there for everybody. So nobody's trying to replace anybody. Nobody's trying to take anything. There is an abundance in the universe. If I had a whole planet, their spirit will build a planet for you, or you could build a planet from the stuff that planets are made of. All of that. All of that. There will never be a lack. God is infinite. Infinite. If we ever were to run to the end of whatever it is that we know, there would still be an infinity beyond. So nobody can be replaced. Nobody can be replaced. The person that was concerned about me going to the prom, there would have been another prom. Or anything else that they might be concerned about protecting. Anything. There is no lack with God. And there is God. The scientists know there is God. No matter who they are, they know that there's a mystery beyond which they cannot figure out. No matter how many numbers they come up with, you can add one. Whatever infinity you come up with, you can add one. I've done all kinds of numbers. I remember when there were slide rules. I remember when I learned to multiply, do algebra, calculus. All of it. So that's my plea. I just want us all, as they say, to work and be America. I believe God is, if you want to say, waiting on us. That may be true. I don't know. But heaven, right here, right now, the kingdom of heaven is now. So, woke is waking up like Mother Teresa and seeing God in what may initially appear as a distressing disguise, and looking so deep into one's own heart and recognizing that the person that you think you're looking at, that person is just a mirror reflecting back to you your very self. Capital S, capital E, capital L, capital F. No matter what they look like, you have brought them forth to yourself. Namaste. Blessings.